Over the past 2 videos, a few buddies and I have showcased 20 fun NES games that can still be found for under $10 in 2020 based off of pricecharting.com, and we have 10 more for you. Got a couple of more friends to help me out with this one, so let's jump right into it.
Now, if you want a damn good challenge, look no further than Ironsword, Wizards and Warriors 2. The iron-chested Fabio is the cover boy and sure is to get some undergarments flowing with this stoic fantasy stance. As sequels go, this one is pretty good. Again, the jumping is something you'll have to get used to, and the platforming is even trickier in this installment. On top of that, you'll need to find a treasure hidden somewhere in the level to even finish it. The graphics are a big improvement over the original and the gameplay is fun, but damn if every animal, insect, human is out for your blood. They just seem to target you almost non-stop. It's ridiculous. If I may steal a line from Wes here.
Oh shit. Oh shit.
Aside from that, you also get shops to spend your ill-gotten gold in, magic spells to find, as well as you can gamble your money away too. How nice. Give it a shot. It's still under $10, so what do you have to lose, other than your shirt and a working controller?
Luckily, Konami was one of the NES's more popular and talented third-party development teams from the very beginning, and their earlier titles are fairly common, resulting in some more affordable games. Russian Attack is one of these cheaper gems, and for under $10 should be in anyone's collection who loves a harrowing challenge. And that's exactly what you're going to get here, as this one is pretty brutal. You play the role of a Green Beret sent into enemy territory to disarm a nuclear device equipped only with a knife. Weapons with limited ammo can also be collected along the way, utilizing the A button, which means pressing up is required to jump. I'd have to say that the jumping mechanic is probably my biggest hurdle in the game, and as a kid, I couldn't even get past stage 2. There are no continues, but Konami was merciful enough to allow 2-player simultaneous play. But despite how difficult Russian Attack can be at times, I find myself returning to it often, and with practice and a lot of memorization, finally beat the damn thing. I like it even more now. Check this one out for sure. One of Capcom's very first games on the NES is also an extremely fun one. Commando is a typical overhead run-and-gun game where you take on the role of Super Joe to infiltrate the enemy's headquarters on foot and overthrow the bad guys to save the day. Undoubtedly a huge influence on the genre, sometimes the innovators get it right the first time, and that's the case with Commando. The controls are responsive, the bullets on screen are easy to decipher from the rest of the background, and the game is peppered with hidden items and secret bunkers, adding a bit of depth to an old 1986 arcade port. This wartime adventure only has 4 stages before they begin to loop, which need to be completed 4 times in order to conquer the game. And with unlimited continues, that shouldn't take too long to pull off. If you haven't checked out Commando yet, splurge a few bucks. It's totally worth it.
Cyber Stadium Series Base Wars. Now, there are so many baseball games on the NES, so if you wanted people to play your game, it had to be unique, and Base Wars is actually a really interesting game. It's actually the only game in the Cyber Stadium series. The gameplay is typical of baseball games on the system, except this time you play as robots. The pitcher shoots balls out of a cannon, but the cool thing is that if there's a call at the plate, you need to duke it out, kind of like how Konami's other game Blades of Steel works. Base Wars is so if you want to change the pace in your baseball games, I suggest picking this one up. Snake, Rattle, and Roll is made by Rare, and it's an isometric game that really ages well. You need to eat nibbly pibblies to grow your snake to get big enough to trigger the scale to ring the bell and exit the level. This game has been under $10 for years, and it has tons of content for you to explore, and it's pretty challenging, so I suggest picking it up. And also the soundtrack is pretty awesome.
Like I had mentioned before, Konami has a lot of decent, less expensive earlier titles from their library, and the Goonies II is just another highlight. Back before Metroidvania was even a term, the Goonies II was as Metroidvania as you could get back in the late 80s. It's even one of the first NES games to offer a password feature. I was fortunate enough to play this one right after completing Metroid in early '88, so I was all over this game. Yeah, I have some nostalgia for the Goonies II, as it does have some extremely archaic and obsolete mechanics, which I can see turning off players today, but at the time were pretty much groundbreaking. As Mikey, you platform and climb throughout the Fratelli hideout in search of all 6 Goonies, who have been captured and are cleverly hidden. The hideout is peppered with doors that can take you to other areas and supply you with items, which will then switch to a first-person point-and-click mode. This can get extremely disorienting, even once you begin to pay attention to which direction that Mikey is facing. Yeah, it makes a difference. But what I've always found appealing about the Goonies II is the whole Metroidvania aspect of locating items, taking note of areas that can't yet be reached, then returning once the necessary equipment is in hand. I've always loved games like that. One of the downsides, though, is that this adventure is completely devoid of boss fights, but it at least has a banging soundtrack, even including an 8-bit rendition of Cyndi Lauper's Goonies Are Good Enough. Sweet!
Alright, so forget everything that YouTube has taught you about the NES game Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because I'm here to set the record straight. The Ninja Turtles' first appearance on the NES was made by Ultra, a subsidiary of Konami, who is known for its classic NES titles. For just under $9, you can play as not one, but all 4 of your favorite masked reptiles, and they are interchangeable at the push of a button. You get to guide Leo, Donnie, Mikey, and Raph through 6 different levels that consist of sewers, dams, city streets and rooftops, the Foot Clan's camp, and finally the Technodrome, to save Splinter and ultimately defeat Shredder to save the world. And all of this while rocking out to an amazing soundtrack. Despite the normal complaints of awkward controls, one-hit deaths, and unfamiliar enemies, there is more than enough fun to be had once you adapt to the learning curve that this game requires. So, do all you can to protect Donnie, and grab my choice sub-weapon of boomerangs and share them with all of your brothers, because Bebop and Rocksteady, a giant mouser, and the rest of the Foot Clan are going to do their best to stop you. TMNT is a game that delivers much more variety and challenge than its beat-em-up sequels, but it's totally beatable, and that's why it gets the NES Addict seal of approval.
If action platformers with a medieval twist turns your crank, Wizards and Warriors is a game you seriously need in your library. The fact that this card is still under $10 puzzles me, as it's a great second-tier platformer. Yeah, the jumping mechanics are a bit floaty, but once you get used to it, you'll be cruising around this game in no time. Our brave knight Kuros is tasked with saving a bevy of 8-bit beauties from the clutches of the evil wizard Malkill, which goes to show you, you never ever trust a magic user. This gem hunting romp will get your blood flowing with a good solid challenge, tons of sub-items from levitating potions, throwing knives, axes, and of course,
The Cloak of Darkness.
it has neat looking bosses and a super underappreciated soundtrack. For under $10, you'd be a fool not to give this one a whirl.
Shadowgate is a computer point-and-click adventure that was ported to the NES in 1989. Now, the idea of playing this type of game using an NES controller may sound like a bit of a turnoff in 2020, but surprisingly, this one is very well done, and I find that navigating the rooms and menus isn't nearly as tedious as you'd think. Setting foot alone into Castle Shadowgate, you're tasked with stopping a warlock lord from conjuring a massive behemoth, and you'll have to rely on nothing more than your wits and the abundance of supplies that can be interacted with throughout. Anything in the castle can send you to your demise, relying on lots of trial and error to solve many of the game's clever riddles. Picking up everything that isn't nailed down is the name of the game here, and there's a good chance that you'll need to utilize just about every single item you come across. Use one incorrectly, however, and you may be SOL and have to restart from your last save file, and even sometimes restart the game entirely. Fun times. But it really is. If you're into wizards, monsters, and dark fantasy type stuff, this one should be right up your alley. While the game isn't too long once you know what you're doing, it's the journey, not the destination, that's so enjoyable. And with excellent graphics and music, Shadowgate is easily one of the better games that can be found for under $10.
Back to the Future was released in 1989 by LJN. Yes, that LJN that everyone seems to hate. Forget everything you ever heard from AVGN and just hear me out. The game is actually pretty faithful to the movie as you race against time to get your parents together and head back to the future, all while avoiding Biff and his goons, preventing your mom from falling in love with you, playing a kick-ass rock show, and trying to get your car to 88 miles per hour. Sure, Marty is wearing the wrong shirt, but is that really a big deal? The game has a nice difficulty curve as later levels only allow enough time to get hit once or twice before running out of time. Enemies get more aggressive and those damn bees are as pesky as ever. Luckily you can get bowling balls and a skateboard to help you get yourself through the stages. This game has been hovering just below $10 lately and is a great buy.
There you go, 10 more fun games that can be found on the NES for under $10 in 2020. And guess what? We're not even finished yet. So more of my buddies and I will come up with another list soon, so stay tuned. Big thanks to Super Nicktendo, Captain Algebra, Max Impact 24, and NES Addicts for helping me out with these lists. You guys are all picking games that I would not have for the most part, so it's nice to have some variety. And thanks everyone for checking out this video. Until part 4, I'll catch you guys later.